Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 164 of Crunch Time. I'm going to be your host for today's episode. I am Tanner Dislin, and as always, I am joined by Sam Gotzi, and we are the N32620. Sam, it's a tough Tuesday. It's a tough Tuesday. We're recording this on Tuesday. It's a tough Tuesday out there.
Yeah, absolutely. March Madness wrapped up. We're kind of in that lull zone between kind of every sport with MLB just starting, the NBA wrapping up. It's a tough time to be a sports fan right now.
Yeah. Now, I fully acknowledge that I am a sicko, and not everyone watches 150 plus games of MLB baseball. This is usually like, I could some people get in, maybe watch the first handful of games because it's new, it's back, and then now that allure has fallen off. So we're kind of back, we're in the slog of games every day. And you mentioned NBA is wrapping up, but we're also at the time where like the playoff picture is fairly set. So games don't really mean anything. And it's just, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And it's definitely, we're going through college basketball withdrawal over here for sure because we do have our champion. Congratulations to the Florida Gators on winning 2025 men's basketball season. Pretty impressive season out of Todd Golden and crew. Not much else to add other than what we will get to later. But of course, before we get to all of that, we will start with winners and losers, Sam. So give me your winner of the episode.
Yeah, my winner of the episode is going to be a sporting event that kind of uh makes up for the lull right now, and that is, of course, the Masters. They'll be teeing off on April 10th, this Thursday when the episode drops. It's kind of the golfing event everybody pays attention to, it seems like. So that'll fill my void of sports for now. But a lot of good. I mean, there's a bunch of storylines going into this one, but some of the notable tea times. Um, we have Phil Mickelson at 8:58 a.m. These are all in Central Time. Scotty Scheffler 9:15. Tony Finau 9:37. Let's see, where is Max Homa, of course, at 11 a.m. That could be a rough go for him the way he's been playing. Brooks Koepka 11:50. Xander Schauffele 12:01. Bryson DeChambeau 12:23. John Rahm 12:34. Where's Rory at? Anyway, but yeah, so the one golfing event it seems like everyone cares about is right around the corner. Super excited for it. It's like the one golfing event like I watch multiple days of, not just Sunday. So kind of pumped for that.
Last week, we talked about how poor the marketing is for the MLB and how bad they are at timing their big events and marketing their big events. The Masters, genius. The first weekend after the Final Four, bam, we're right back into the Masters. Genius. Genius. And something about the Masters, man, it just feels like the Masters feels like spring. Like, obviously, March Madness, spring. I wish it wasn't over, obviously. But when March Madness finishes and we kind of open to the Masters in Georgia, the sun shine, everyone's in t-shirts, it really feels like the winter sport. We close the book on the winter sport. We close the book on the winter, and we're here in spring, and that's what that feels like to me. So definitely unfortunate for basketball ending, but yeah, the Masters is here again. Brilliant by the Masters. Tons of sports fans who are just fiending for something to watch, bet on responsibly, of course, and enjoy. So the Masters is here. For my winner, Sam, I am going to go with Alex Ovechkin. Yes, as I'm sure all of you have heard, he has passed Wayne Gretzky with the NHL's all-time goal scoring leader. Ovechkin scored his 895th goal against the Islanders a couple days ago to take sole possession from Wayne Gretzky, who is at 894. Yeah, an all-time legend. Passes Wayne Gretzky, a record that a lot of people thought would never be broken.
Yeah, that was crazy. Obviously, we're not the biggest hockey guys on this podcast, but we all were keeping track of the Ovechkin when it was getting closer and closer, he finally pulled it out. Yeah, it's gonna be. I say it's gonna be one of those records that will probably never broken, but I'm sure hockey fans thought that when Wayne
Mm-hmm.
Gretzky first did. So who knows? But it's freaking awesome seeing hockey kind of get some limelight in the busiest in the past couple months with everything else going on. So it's cool seeing that
No
and
doubt.
it come into fruition.
No doubt. I mean, history is always really fun to see. Now, Sam, I have a trivia question for you. Who did it in less games, Ovechkin or Gretzky?
Ovechkin.
Trick question. The exact same number of games. Isn't that
Damn,
crazy?
that is crazy. What
They
the heck?
Ovechkin scored his 895th goal in game 1,487. Wayne Gretzky in his career played 1,487 games.
Damn.
Bonkers.
That's
How about the
crazy.
wild meter? Give me a wild meter.
That's pretty damn wild.
That's pretty wild. That's unbelievable, actually. But yeah, same amount of games. Ovechkin, one goal more. So shout out Ovechkin.
Here's another wild.
Let's hear it.
When he broke it on April 6th, that was the anniversary of the Caps winning the lottery to
To
draft.
draft him. Jeez, man. Some things in sports are stories just written from a higher power, it seems like, but really impressive stuff. A truly unbreakable record, I believe, will be Wayne Gretzky's point record. Um, for reference, yeah, Ovechkin has that one more goal. He's currently sitting at 1,619 career points. Gretzky is sitting at
Yeah, I don't think
2,857
that
career
one's gonna
points.
get broken
That
anytime
one,
soon.
that record is unbelievable. But the man of the hour is Alex Ovechkin. Shout out to him. Like you said, not the biggest hockey fans around here, but there, tell you what, there's been one thing that has been consistent for essentially all of our lives, or a few players have, but one of them is Alex Ovechkin in the Washington Capitals. So pretty impressive stuff. Shout out to you, Alex Ovechkin. But we need to move on, of course, and we need to talk about some things that didn't go so well for some people over this past week. So, Sam, who's your loser?
You know, Tanner, this loser, I didn't know where which side is the bigger loser, but I think I've come to a conclusion that my loser of the episode is going to be the Denver Nuggets, Tanner. They announced earlier today that they have fired head coach Michael Malone and GM 3 games before the playoffs begin. Um, I'm stunned. This team is tied for fourth right now. They have the best player in the NBA right now in Jokic. Um, Something makes me believe that there's some behind doors that is the case because it literally makes no sense. I mean, 2 years ago, this guy coached the NBA champs.
I mean, what are we doing here, man? That's the second playoff team to fire their coach.
Yeah,
I like. I'm telling you, the NBA doesn't feel like a real league.
no,
It literally feels like a soap opera. It feels like it literally feels like this is fiction. I have nothing. I
yeah,
literally have nothing. And the GM too, the one who built the team.
yeah.
What? I mean, come on, man.
So
Justice for them.
this is Malone's pedigree as he enters. after post Nuggets. So he is the first and only championship in Nuggets history, most regular season and playoff wins. He amassed a record of 471 and 327 losses. That's a winning percentage of 59% over 10 years. And if you count this year, it would have been the seventh straight postseason. And in postseason, 44 and 36 postseason record. And then obviously Jokic, three-time MVP, and it will probably should win his fourth, but just
I mean,
absolutely
truthfully,
wild.
what are we doing here?
Like it makes no sense.
4 seed, a legitimate contender as they have been for the past 6 years or so, and have won a title, and the people responsible have just been canned. I got
Yeah.
nothing, man. I truthfully have nothing. An unbelievable joke of a league that this is the second time a head coach has been fired just before the playoffs, with the Grizzlies doing it as well. I have got absolutely nothing. I have got absolutely
Yeah. Makes no sense to me.
makes absolutely no sense to me either. But Sam, for my loser, we're going to go back on to the hardwood. However, on the women's side of things, we have women's ratings. That is my loser of the episode. First off, congratulations to UConn on winning the what seems like their millionth national title in our lifetime. Beat the absolute crap out of everybody. Could not have been the polar opposite of the men's tournament. The Final Four was an absolute snooze fest. Everything was a blowout. But UConn came out on top. So I know Paige, obviously a great player. With all the injuries, definitely shout out to her and shout out to UConn for winning a national title game. But Sam, like I said, the game was a blowout. It was UConn versus South Carolina, the definition of blue bloods in women's basketball. The ratings came in, and oh boy, they did not do as well as last year with Iowa versus South Carolina. Now, I will say last year was record breaking when Iowa and South Carolina had a combined 18.9 million viewers. But for this go around with UConn versus South Carolina, Sam, less than half of that with 8.5 million viewers.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
So turns out people actually do want to watch Caitlin Clark play basketball.
It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. I will say though, the Final Four, I think you just mentioned, but like the Final Four and the championship game were absolute blowouts. So like people that might have turned it on probably didn't, just checking the phone on their scores. But yeah, the fact of the matter is Caitlin Clark is the reason women's college basketball was so popular last year, and is strictly the reason the number was where it was.
Yeah. And now, of course, we're bringing. It feels like we got to bring back our probably most common segment, or top five most common segment, Mad About Iowa, because of course now Paige getting a national title brought into question the legitimacy of Caitlin Clark's college career, because in that top five recruiting class that has, that famous one with all the top players, I believe, with Paige, Reese, Clark, Brink, and Cardoso, four of the five have rings. Caitlin does not. And I've got nothing to say to that. I'm not even going to entertain that level of stupidity. Sam.
Yeah, I mean, so is Paige, UConn, LSU. Now obviously not the level of UConn, but they had one. Whether you like her or not, you can't deny the fact that she's a good coach. At LSU, Kim Mulkey. Cameron Brink is kind of the weird one. When did she win the championship?
Couldn't tell. That surprised the hell out of me. I had no idea she won. She must have been a freshman or sophomore
Yeah,
because
but
for as long as I can remember, she hasn't won. But
yeah,
obviously, we're wrong.
yeah, and then obviously Cardosa with
South
yeah,
Carolina.
so
Yeah.
she was her freshman year, helped her team win the Natty. So, and then Cardosa, South Carolina. Like we're really gonna compare these teams to Iowa. Like, come on. Like the fact people are even having this conversation is absolutely absurd. Because let's be honest here, Tanner, we wouldn't even know who those people were if it weren't for Caitlin Clark. I'm just putting it how it is. Um now Paige, I feel like we probably would have because she was hoping. But yeah, I think the impact of Caitlin Clark goes beyond wins and losses and championships. Like she started a entire movement for people actually discussing women's basketball. So yeah, she doesn't have a collegiate ring, but look who she was playing with compared to the other people on that list.
Exactly. And look, I think the best way to put it is I saw someone put it absolutely perfectly. Obviously, we're a little biased because we are Iowa fans, went to Iowa, so obviously we're gonna love Caitlin and what she did for the university. However, someone put it in the perfect terms for the average fan. They said, "Look, the reason why Caitlin Clark was so loved, obviously she was really good, but women's basketball is one of the least entertaining products out there, specifically when it comes to parity, because UConn, South Carolina, Stanford have been in the Final Four. I think at least one of them has been in the Final Four going all the way back to like before the 2000s. Like they just, it's just how it is. They are always there. The one seeds always win. If it's not the one, it's the two. And it's just how it's always been. And then I understand that they were high seeds, but here comes Iowa, man. Like they don't belong in that group of teams. And then they suddenly were because of the greatest women's college basketball player of our generation. And she ran into better teams that had five players that were better than all five players that were playing on Iowa. And that's fine. I'm not, that's totally fine. LSU was the better team. South Carolina was the better team in those 2 years. That's totally fine. But why she's so loved, man, is just that it was something new. It was something refreshing in a sport that has nothing new. It's the same 4, 5, 6 teams every year. This was new. It was a new team. And look, I was never going to be a favorite when it comes to titles. They just aren't. It's just the fact of the matter. So the fact that they were in that conversation was refreshing. It was new in a sport that has none. So that's it. It's not because she's white. It's not because her team is white. It's not because she represented a state that is majority white. It is because she was something that was new. And that's that. That's to close the book on that. But yeah, turns out not having Caitlin Clark will do big time damage to the ratings for the women's national title game. But that's enough of that. Should we talk some ball, Sam?
Let's do it.
Let's do it because we had the Final Four this weekend, Sam, and we mentioned how the women's bracket was blowouts upon blowouts. The men's bracket was completely different. We had 3 total games, obviously the 2 semis and the title game, a total of 11 points separated all 3 of those games. This was absolutely awesome. Give me your generic thoughts of the 1 seed invitational.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing throughout this March Madness was just wait. Just wait. We thought we'd get in the Sweet 16. We thought we'd get in the Elite Eight. Final Four comes around, and that's where it came into fruition. It was one of, if not the greatest Final Four, at least in my lifetime. Obviously, there's some that go way back that were probably better. But in my lifetime, it's very hard to beat. And that might be just due to recency bias, but really these games top to bottom were incredible. I was shocked by the results of these games, but yeah, this Final Four championship was a box office, man. I mean, this is what happens when you get the four best teams. I've been the four best teams all year, and man, it was so fun to watch. I'm sad it's over. I wish we could just play those three games over and over again because I think we'd get different results each game. Um, but that that's I mean March Madness. That was the essence of March Madness. Now, obviously, the talk has been no upsets, nothing like that, but you saw the best go against the best, and it showed, and that's why I think this Final Four was so electric.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like just wait, just wait. Like the payoff obviously was this, and it was so good. And it was one where I'm like, I got to be honest, like I wish the payoff came sooner, but then again, you just wait, and it was so worth it. Like it was so worth it. These games were so awesome, and I got to say, I think in the three games, two of the three, the better team that day lost, which is just shows you how good these teams are at staying in games, doing all the little things, and then pouncing when the moment is right. But we'll jump into the games to start.
I'm pretty sure every team that was lean at half for all three games ended up losing.
Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so we'll start on the early game on Saturday. Florida Auburn SEC matchup. They had already played once during the year. Florida won that game, and they win again in this one, beating Auburn 79-73 to punch their ticket to the title game.
Yeah, Auburn was dominating this first half. They kept feeding Janai Broom, and he just went to work on Alex Condon, Shinny Lou, whoever was guarding him. He was giving them buckets. He wasn't 100%. Now, I'm not saying that's why Florida won because that 100% is not the reason they won. But the fact they just like stopped going to him. The amount of times I saw Auburn post up on the 3-point line was pissing me off. Like, obviously, I think Cooper Flag won the player of the year. I think he is deserving, but Janai Broom, if he doesn't get hurt, has a could very well have won that award. But back to the game, man. It just the Gators got hot. They outscored the Auburn Tigers 41-27 behind the man, the myth, the legend, Walter Clayton, putting on an absolute performance. 34 in this one in just 35 minutes, 11 for 18, 5 for 8, 3 points. Simply put, the Florida Gator guards are what won them this game. Condon might be one of the worst basketball players I've ever seen. Will Richard, who came up huge last night, shot like shit this game. It's just when one guy is off, the next guy's up. I mean, Elijah Martin had the dunk of the tournament. Walter Clayton, this duo, and then Thomas Howe coming off the bench putting up 12. It just doesn't make much sense. That Auburn went away from Janai Broom. And you gotta be kicking yourself if you're Auburn. You were dominating that first half. But you gotta get more out to Todd Pettiford. We talked about how great he has been all tournament. Went 1 for 6 in this one. Finished with 7 points. That's just something you can't do with him being such an important piece to this offense outside Broom.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll start with the Auburn side of things. Hot start you mentioned. Uh, Baker Mazzara got it going from three. He was the leading scorer on the day, but Broom just completely and totally was the engine that moved this offense. I mean, like you said, he was doing everything. When do you think his last field goal was in this game?
Probably like 10 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, that would be absurd, right?
Yeah.
15
Oh,
12. He went without a field goal in the final 15 minutes and 12 seconds.
it makes no sense.
It's almost impossible to do. But they did it. And yeah, it's just that's where the that's where the game was lost. I mean, you talk about a lot of different things. Obviously, Pettiford had his worst game of the tournament. It seemed like only shot 1 for 6, only had 7 points. Um, I mean, but other than that, I think in general, I can't speak to an individual where I was like, yeah, you did not play well today. Pettiford was a little bit lackluster, and then obviously Broom in the second half was nowhere to be found. But I think that's just unbelievable. How you go home in the final four with your best player and one of the best players in college basketball, not scoring a field goal in the last 15 minutes. It just can't happen. Absolutely can't happen. And then on the Florida side of things, obviously you mentioned that hot second half, outscoring Auburn by 14, winning the second half 41-27, and of course on the back of Walter Clayton. And let me just say something, Sam. Walter Clayton was not good. Walter Clayton was not great. Walter Clayton was sensational in this basketball game. He did everything: 5 for 8 from deep, 11 from 18 from the field, 7 for 7 from the free throw line. You needed a three, as he's done all tournament long. We all know that little kind of step back, dribble back three that he shot. He was unbelievable, getting in the lane, drawing fouls. There aren't enough words in the English language to talk about how sensational Walter Clayton was in this game. Everywhere his hands were all over, and yeah, I mean that's kind of where this game was won. Obviously, Elijah Martin had the dunk. He helped it, pitched in with 17, but the rest of their starters combined for 13. So it was really on the back of Walter Clayton and Elijah Martin. They willed their team to victory here. And they outlasted the Tigers, who decided to not throw the ball to Janai Broom for some reason.
Yeah, made no sense, man. But you live and you learn, I guess. But yeah, absolutely atrocious.
A real tough one to learn if you are Bruce Pearl now. 2 trips to the Final Four with Auburn, two kind of gut wrenching losses to Virginia in 2019 and now Florida in 2025. But moving on to the next game, I don't really know how to describe this game, so I'm just going to tell you the score. Houston beat Duke 70-67.
Who knew inbounding the ball was so hard, was the hardest part of basketball, according to the Duke Blue Devils. But Tanner, I was in shock. And I don't, and it's not even the fact that um, Duke got beat, because I did think it was possible, especially when the matchup was Houston. I think Houston was one of the most underrated teams all season. But I was like, there's no, like, is in the back of my head. I was like, what? There's just so many mismatches. Um, and then I watched this game. Um, Tanner, if you look at win probability, Duke was a 97% with 230.
Yeah.
The score was 64-55. They didn't score another point till about 130 left in this game. It was one of the worst collapses. in college basketball, maybe basketball history. Um, it is the Duke is the only team to have a tournament game with a higher field goal percentage, more free throw attempts, more assists, fewer turnovers, and more steals than their opponent, and still lose. It was tough. They led by 14 with 8 minutes left, 9 with 2 minutes left, 6 with 34 seconds left, 3 with 25 seconds left, and 1 with 19 seconds left. I mean, as good as Houston played, I think this game is more about the absolute collapse that was the Duke Blue Devils. Um, I mean, I was shocked. I still don't think I've comprehended it. And one thing I will say though, the shot by Cooper Flag, not the greatest shot, but I didn't hate it. Like it
It
was
was it was
there.
it was fine. It was a
It was
fine,
fine.
decent look.
But I mean, and the fact they got the ball to Tyrese Proctor and he just like didn't give it up, shooting 65% when you have Concanapple, who's like statistically one of the best free throw shooters, I think, and Cooper
90
Flag was
plus.
8 for 8.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I mean,
what the
I've gone back and forth because like Houston's just so impressive with their ability to just not go. You know, it's Kelvin Sampson coach teams, man. They're gonna rebound the basketball, tough as nails. They're not gonna quit on anything. They're just gonna keep going, keep going, keep going until that buzzer sounds. And I got to give them credit for that. And my initial reaction was like, man, Houston, all the credit in the world. And then I just thought about it more, and I was just like, man, like Duke. So you mentioned the inbounding. Had to use, I mean, had the big turnover, right? The turnover that led to a 3-point attempt that was missed, and then a putback dunk by Tugler, I believe, that cut the game to I believe to a 1 point lead at that point. That was the big play when everyone kind of went like, oh, but that was the big one where he just completely turned it over, not being able to inbound. Then you had a previous one where he tried to get it in, and Houston was able to deflect it out of bounds when they absolutely needed a steal. Didn't get it, but they deflected it out of bounds and forced Duke to re-inbound it. In the one where they actually turned the ball over, he had a timeout. Now he ended up using that timeout to drop the play for Cooper Flag, which was just an ISO play. I feel like he
yeah.
could have just done that without the
Mm-hmm.
timeout. So maybe better timeout usage out of John Shire. But look, the inability to inbound the basketball, I can't help but think the lack of pressure inbounds for this Duke team. They absolutely ran through the ACC with the least resistance possible. They ran through the ACC tournament, and obviously Cooper Flag didn't play. Well, they ran through the ACC tournament. They ran through the ACC regular season. They ran through their region without playing any close game. This team just didn't have to play stressful basketball. They didn't have to inbound. They didn't have to make stressful free throws. And who knows? Maybe that's not the reason why this happened, but it's hard to not see the correlation, Sam.
Yeah.
And one team was battle tested. They had done this against Purdue 2 rounds earlier. They had done this, throughout the season, playing teams like Iowa State, Arizona, who was a little up and down, but really kind of sharpened their axe against the Big 12, against other teams in the tournament. And they were so much better down the stretch than Duke.
Yeah. Simply put. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that I think Sampson completely outcoached Shire down the stretch. Like it was like Shire was coaching his first, like the fact the inbounds mishaps just kept happening over and over and over and over. You think he'd burn the timeout and be like, calm the hell down. But no, it never happened. And shout out Samson, man. What a great coaching performance, especially when his guys weren't even playing that well. Like,
Yeah.
I think this was
Yeah, obviously,
not,
when I said I think 2 of the 3 games the better team for majority of the game lost, this is one of them. This
yeah.
is absolutely one of them.
Oh, 100%. I mean, yeah, back to what I was saying, Houston did not play well. Jawan Roberts, 4 for 11. Milo Uzan, 3 for 10. Emmanuel Sharp, who has been money all postseason except for last night, 4 for 13. But obviously, when you got LJ Cryer, who'd been 8 for 14, 26 points, he was a bright spot on the Cougars offense. But as I think Duke lost this game more than Houston won it.
Yeah, and upon review, I think I agree. My initial reaction was the other way because I kind of wanted to give Houston some flowers, but I just the more I look at it, the more I'm like, man, Duke really just pissed this away. And to put it like how much of a collapse this actually was, dude. Very rarely do you get the entire internet, the entire everyone watching the game in agreement. And the agreement here was just complete and total shock.
Yeah.
Because look, I know I mentioned give all the credit to Houston being able to just withstand the Duke runs, stay in it. And they did. I mean, what the largest lead for Duke was like 14, maybe 12 or
Yeah,
14.
14.
Um, which is
14 with 8 minutes
which
left.
is a decent sized lead, but even when Houston would maybe go on a quick little spurt to cut it to 8, maybe even 6, it always felt like Duke was in control. They always had the
Mm-hmm.
answer. Houston would put it to 6, Duke would hit a 3. That's just how it would go and be like,
Yeah.
okay, Duke really has control of this game until they didn't, until it all went haywire. You mentioned Emmanuel Sharp. I mean, obviously, we'll talk about the championship game, but I think the most overlooked shot is Houston had the ball down 6, and he hit a pretty huge step back 3 to cut it to 3. Then on the ensuing inbound, that was the turnover that led to the putback dunk by Tugler to cut it to 1, and that's when everyone was like, "Oh, this game is on."
Yeah.
So Emmanuel Sharp. Now a lot of people are going to talk about that 3. That was absolutely huge, obviously. But yeah, what a complete utter collapse by Duke. And we also should touch on obviously the over the back by Cooper Flag. Not an over the back. I think we can all agree on
Terrible
that.
call.
Terrible
Yeah.
call.
But that's not the reason Duke lost
I
this game.
mean, we can list the reasons. And obviously you mentioned a little bit. Just I cannot believe the worst free throw shooter on the floor decided to keep the basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And go to the line for the front end of a 1-and-1, which guess what? He missed.
Yeah.
Which led to the over the back.
Absurd.
So, really, really interesting stuff for Duke. And yeah, the entire internet was in shock. And I imagine I saw that it was the players, I don't know if it was after the media or what it was, but they were in a golf cart driving through the tunnels. And Cooper Flag looked like he had just gotten back from war. Like
Yeah.
the look on his face was just like 1,000-mile stare. Like he couldn't comprehend what
just happened. Yeah.
because guess what? We were the same.
It was crazy. I remember we were obviously watching the game. We just sat there in silent. We're like, there's no way. There's no way. It was unreal. Unreal.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But of course, that set up the national championship on Monday night. Florida versus Houston. And as we mentioned before, Sam, the Gators take home the championship 65-63. They now join UConn as the only programs with 3+ national championships over the last 20 years. So your typical blue bloods, UConn and Florida.
Yep. This game started out really rough. It was very clear the adrenaline was pumping. Both combined, I think, till I believe Richard made one with 13-ish minutes left in the first half. They were over 13. And from 3, believe it or not, it didn't get much better. Each shooting 25 and 24%. respectively. But it was ugly, but it was so fun. It was the ugliest, most sicko game out there, but it was awesome, man. This is what you kind of dream of as a hoops fan, college hoops fan, especially kind of ugly, but it had you on the edge of your seat the entire time. And obviously the story with Florida was Walter Clayton, but not this game. Kelvin Sampson had the answer to stop Clayton Jr. Um, he shot 3 for 10, 11 points. But the guy that stepped up huge for the Florida Gators kind of got that offense going after an extremely rough start. Will Richard, I mentioned how bad he was in the semifinal game. He was phenomenal in this one, 5 for 10, 18 points. Um, both on the offense and defensive end. He was incredible, especially with guys like Clayton and Martin not having your typical game combined. They shot 5 for 20. But I just can't believe Florida won this game, man, because it always seemed Houston was an arm length away from Florida, and then Walter Clayton started hitting shots, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. So a little bit of how this game went. You mentioned it was really ugly to start. Some of the shooting numbers are pretty poor, as you read out. And guys that you look to, obviously, Florida. Well, we'll start with Walter Clayton versus LJ Cryer, right? That was going to be the big matchup. The two of them combined shot a total of 9 for 28.
It's pretty solid.
9 for 28, 6 for 18 for Cryer, 3 for 10 for Clayton. So
Buckets.
the guards, the leaders of each team really did not have it in the game. So we had to look who's going to step up, who's going to step up. And obviously one person stepped up. I would say really there's one player who like looked at them and said, wow, they played great. And that, of course, is Will Richard, as you mentioned, 18 points on 5 for 10 shooting, 4 for 7 from deep, much needed from the Gators. Like the thing here though with Houston, it's Juwan Roberts, it's LJ Cryer, it's Emmanuel Sharp, and it's Milos Uzan shooting a combined. That's four. By the way, that's 4/5 of your starting lineup right there. 2 for 9. That's 5 for 20. 11 for 38. 14 for 51. Sam.
It's pretty good.
14 for 51 from 4/5 of your starting line.
It's pretty good, man.
It's just not good. It's just not good, and it was not enough. And is not enough to get it done. Although Houston at one point was really getting after it defensively, and I think it was within the first 5-6 minutes of the second half they opened up a 12-point lead,
Yeah.
and that's when it was like, oh boy. And Todd Golden timeout. Florida came out of the timeout with a really crisp set, got a dunk for Condon, I believe, cut it to 10. Then I believe the next two possessions were Walter Clayton and ones, and the game was back on.
Yeah.
And the game was back on from that moment. And Houston just simply put did not make enough shots down the stretch. And it's a shame because I think there's one person we can look to on Houston as someone who did not play their best in this game and did not play their best down the stretch, which is unfortunate because he was really good for Houston this run, specifically against Purdue. When LJ Cryer did not have it, absolutely did not have it. Emmanuel Sharp stepped up, and this was a tough day for him.
Yeah. Obviously, in the biggest moment of the game. Now I didn't love the set for Houston down the stretch. Um,
The one for the three.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
I do think playing for the win. If you're Houston, I understand trying to play for the win. That's just not it's not who Houston is.
yeah,
However, when you look at the set, there's a screenshot that's still taken where yeah, Sharp has it,
yeah,
and the defenders are both, he's a couple steps behind the 3 point line. He has it, he's getting ready in shooting motion, and all defenders are behind the line. I really think he had the look.
yeah,
I really think he had the look. I think the play was there. I think he had the look. Um, I just think he needed to let it fly.
yeah. I I mean, we've seen him hit those type of shots throughout this season. Yeah. I mean, is that the greatest closeout of history? I mean,
In fairness, yes, it was a good closeout by Clayton.
yeah,
And I believe one of the big men who was guarding the screener also had a hand up.
yeah.
But
Probably
again,
Condon.
yeah, probably Condon, but I think he had the look. And I obviously what he did, you can't do. The game expired as the ball was just bouncing there
Yeah,
with no one to. And if it gets blocked, it gets blocked. But in all likelihood, it goes out of bounds, and you're doing it again.
yeah,
But that, and obviously the possession before, Houston down one, and a dribble drive by Emmanuel Sharp gets stripped off his
yeah,
thigh. Ball goes to Florida. A real rough game, real rough
yeah.
stretch for
Absolutely.
for an upperclassman who was unbelievably good for Houston. And yeah, and that's just unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely sucks for Emmanuel Sharp, but Houston, they just had no help.
That's it, man. It's like
Their guys couldn't get going, and Florida, Clayton and Martin couldn't get going. They had another dude, Richard, stepped up huge, and is strictly the reason why Florida won this game.
exactly. I mean, again, 4/5 of your starting lineup, and we can even include a Tugler in there for your entire starting lineup because he only took three
Yeah,
shots. He was 2 for 3, as big men do. But like your starting lineup was 5, 11, 14, 16 for 54.
yeah,
Can't That's just it's just not enough offense to beat Florida, even when Clayton's not going, even when a lot of their starters aren't going. It's not enough to beat Florida. They just have
yeah,
too much offense, too many guys, and eventually one of them step up, and Will Richard was that guy for Florida. So again, I think Houston outplayed Florida for the majority of this game. I think Houston probably should have won this game.
yeah,
Florida did, because when it mattered most, one person stepped up on the basketball floor, and he was wearing blue instead of red.
yep,
So Florida Gators are your national champion. It's unfortunate. It's really sad. An interesting March Madness. Obviously, the early rounds were not there, and I think it was definitely an anticlimactic ending with Houston not even getting a shot off. But the Final Four absolutely delivered, as I mentioned, 11 points in 3 games. So, anything you want to say to wrap up this championship game, this tournament, Final Four, or even the season
yeah.
as a whole?
Yeah, dude. It was a incredible college basketball season. A ton of chaos. Um, turns out the SEC was as good as everyone said it was. Duke will, regardless of how their season ended, I think is one of the best college teams of all time, and I don't think
Yep.
it's up for debate. Um, sometimes you just need one dude to get hot. And Florida had that dude in this postseason. Obviously, he struggled in the championship, but 34 and 35 in the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight in Final Four. He was absolute so one
And
outstanding player of the tournament or whatever they call it.
And by the way, in both those games, his team was on the ropes
Yeah.
against Auburn, down double digits in the first half, against Texas Tech, down double digits in the second half. Team was on the ropes.
Yeah.
And in this game, when his team was on the ropes, who had the back-to-back and ones?
Yeah. Exactly.
Who did? Walter Clayton, an unbelievable basketball player, an unbelievable run. Obviously, you mentioned most outstanding player of the tournament. Obviously, it had to be Walter Clayton, most outstanding player of this game. That was like a finals MVP or,
Yeah.
kind of how they did. It would obviously be Richard for Florida, but that's what good teams do, man. And Florida just happened to be that team. And not only were they an unbelievable team, top five for most of the year, but they also they were top five, but they really kicked it into high gear in that SEC tournament and
Yeah.
parlayed that, of course, into the March Madness tournament. So one of the best teams in basketball, obviously now looking back, the best team, got hot at the right time, was that talented, had one of the best players, had a dog you can lean on when they needed it most. Florida Gators were your national champion, Todd Golden. Shout out his coaching ability. I will just say, well, I'll leave it at that. The San Francisco guy, the University of San Francisco to Florida, 39 years old, I believe,
Yeah.
one of the youngest to win. Um, how much else I think we can add,
Yeah,
man?
man.
Just really
Awesome season. Subpar tournament as a whole. One of the best Final Fours and championships. That is what happens when you get 4-1 seeds. They were the four best teams all season, and they showed it in this March Madness. It was awesome. This season was absolutely electric, and I'm sad it's over.
definitely sad it's over. It's tough because, like you said, a lot of people now don't have sports going on that they care about. For me, I won't be able to watch Iowa sports that I care about until football season comes around. I won't be able to watch college sports that I care about until football season comes around. So, and as you mentioned, just in general, end of basketball season, it's a long wait till football comes back around. So that's unfortunate, but for me, at least, I have the MLB. You have a little bit of college baseball. We'll manage, of course. But anything else to add, man?
No, man, I think that's a wrap.
I think that's a wrap. So that will wrap up episode 164 of Crunch Time. Put a bow on this college basketball season. It was another one in the books, another great one. Obviously, Iowa really struggled, but could be a seminal moment in the transition of the program. And historic dominance from the top four teams, all made it to the Final Four. Everything that we just talked about. But before that, of course, talked a little bit about the women's tournament, dropping viewership, talked about some things on the ice with Ovechkin, and of course, the Masters coming up, a tradition unlike any other. But make sure to follow the podcast on X, TikTok, and Instagram at crunchtime_pod. Tweeting out clips constantly, our reaction to stuff. Definitely check that out. Having some also quick hitter reaction videos as well when news breaks. Find that all on our social media and follow the podcast on YouTube at Crunch Time with the N326 Duo. Podcasts are more fun when you're watching them. We believe that. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe over there. But the clock has run out on this episode, and we'll see you in the next one on Crunch Time.
Year.